Good day everyone, I am Melvin, and in this report, the Group 8 will present about data analysis and different types of data analysis on the basis of variables. To define data analysis, it is an examination of data or facts in terms of quantity, quality, attribute, trait, pattern, trend relationship among others so as to answer research questions which involve statistical techniques and procedures. Ano nga ba ang purpose ng data analysis? Sa data analysis, magsisimula tayo sa pagkalap ng mga raw data, then i-convert natin siya into useful information. Ito yung nagpapakita kung paano natin intindihin o i-analysa yung mga information, facts, raw data para masagot yung questions natin regarding sa research. Sinasabi rin dito na ang data analysis ang pinakamatrabaho sa lahat ng stage ng research. Dito rin papasok yung pag-a-apply mo ng statistical techniques or logical techniques para ma-evaluate at analyze yung data at makuha yung mga information na makatutulong sa research, makapag-come up sa conclusion at makapagbigay ng recommendations. Kapag kasi sinabing data analysis, napakaraming paraan para mag-analyze ng data, pero ang pinakang fundamental dito ay ang paggamit ng tinatawag na Likert scale. Ito yung table na may numeric value at word equivalents. So meron siyang salita na katumbas ng mga numbers na makukuha sa analysis ng data or sa paggamit ng statistical formula. Sa pamamagitan nito, mako-convert natin yung numbers, yung numerical value sa salita na naintindihan o maiintindihan ng mga nagbabasa at nagre-research. So, ito yung data analysis. Pangalawa naman, isasama ko na rin sa explanation yung interpretation. Ito naman ay prompt table, yung tabulated form. Sa baba, ikikwento mo, inanarrate mo yung kung ano yung kahulugan ng mga values na nakuha. Ang example ay itong nakapresent ngayon sa screen. And now let's move forward to the types of data analysis. The first one is the Univariate Analysis. This type of data analysis tests a single variable to determine whether the sample is similar to the population from which it has been drawn. Ang Univariate Analysis ay ang pinakasimpleng type ng data analysis. Yung word na uni ay nangangahulugang isa. Kaya sa madaling salita, yung data dito ay may isang variable lang. Tutukuyin din dito kung may connection ba yung variable sa sample at population. Ang univariate ay isang term upang ilarawan ng isang uri ng data na binubuo ng mga obserbasyon sa isang solong katangian. Ang isang simpleng halimbawa nito ay yung bilang ng mga babae at lalaking estudyante sa PUP. And another given example for univariate analysis is presented on the screen. The problem is how adequate are the instructional materials at different levels of SUC in certain regions as perceived by the science and mathematics instructors and professors. To translate it, gaano daw ba kasapat yung mga instructional materials sa iba't ibang antas ng state universities and colleges sa ilang region ayon sa mga professors ng science and mathematics. So, bali ang variable dito ay yung iba't ibang antas ng state universities and colleges. Yung sa null hypothesis naman niya, sinasabi dito na hindi sapat yung instructional materials na binibigay. Kapag kasi sinabing null hypothesis, there is no significant effect or relationship between your variables. Ibig sabihin, it didn't work, hindi effective. But in case na yung research mo ay null, I think it wouldn't really affect your grades. Kasi when composing a research paper, it doesn't really matter whether it's null or alternative. Kasi yung pinakamahalaga ay kung paano mo kinompose yung research paper mo. And please correct me if I'm wrong with this. So, ano ba yung mga dapat mong masagot kung sakaling null yung research mo? Bakit siya null in the first place? Ano yung properties na kulang or ano yung mga factors bakit hindi siya naging effective? Your reasons should be valid and supported by related literature, so pwede natin i-identify kung meron tayong human error or inconsistency dun sa procedures natin that could have affected the results. The next one is the statistical tool. In the given example, the weighted arithmetic mean is used because the options are very adequate or 4, adequate or 3, fairly adequate or 2, and inadequate or 1 have weights. Ginamit na statistical tool yung weighted mean sa problem na ito upang makuha yung results kung sapat ba o hindi yung mga instructional materials sa iba't ibang antas ng state universities. And for the results or yung interpretation sa data analysis ay ito. For example, the results of the foregoing problem may be as follows. Level 1 of state universities and colleges has a weighted mean of 3.6, which is very adequate. The next level has 3.4, which is adequate, while the level 3 has 2.9, which is also adequate, and the last level, level 4, has 2.8, which is adequate. Thank you for listening. The next reporter is Miss Laica Paraiso.
Let's proceed to bivariate analysis. It tests two variables on how they differ with each other. These variables are changing and are compared to find the relationship between them. For example, if you are studying a group of students to find out their average math score and their age, ang two variables doon ay ang math score and yung age ng mga students. And if you're studying only one variable, for example, is only the math score of these students, yun yung tinatawag na univariate. The common statistical tools to be used in this type of analysis are correlation coefficient, z-test, and t-test. Correlation coefficient is used in both descriptive and experimental design. The z-test is only used in descriptive designs, while the t-test is used in experimental designs. Correlations is a statistical association technique na kung saan ay inoobserbahan o dinidetermine nila yung strength ng relationship between dun sa dalawang variables. And correlation is symbolized by letter R. For the example in the descriptive design, the problem here is what is the relationship of English and mathematics as perceived by 10 BSF students in certain fishery school. So the variables ay yung English scores and the mathematics scores. Pag sinabi namang null hypothesis, is yun yung common statistical theory na kung saan is sinasuggest nila na walang statistical relationship dun sa dalawang variables. So for the null hypothesis, there is no relationship between English and mathematics as perceived by 10 BSF students in certain fishery school. Like what I've said a while ago, the common statistical tool is the correlation coefficient. And for the result is 0.87. The correlation numerical value is measured from -1 to 1. -1 is a perfect negative relationship, while 1 is a perfect positive relationship, and 0 means no relationship. After calculating, 0.1 to 0.3 indicates a weak positive or negative relationship, 0.4 to 0.6 is a moderate positive or negative relationship, while 0.7 to 0.9 is a strong positive or negative relationship. 0.87 shows a strong relationship between the two variables. This means that the student who got high score in English also got high score in mathematics, and those who got low score in English also got low score in mathematics. Thus, this means that there is a positive correlation in the achievement scores in English and mathematics. And for the experimental design, what is the relationship between the weight and length of cultured milkfish cultured at the fish pond using the bread meal and a supplemental feed? So the two variables is the weight and length of the milkfish. For the result, the value is 0.90, which also shows a strong positive relationship. This means that the heavier the weight, the longer the length of the milkfish, and the lighter the weight, the shorter the length of the milkfish. Another example is the relationship between the age and the systolic blood pressure ng mga workers from age 30 to 55. Bivariate data is commonly displayed using a scatter plot. This is a plot on a grid paper of y-axis and x-axis. Scatter plot is one of the popular types of graphs that gives us much more clear picture of a possible relationship between the variables. Yung line of best fit naman is yung diagonal line na kung saan yung pinakamalapit dun is yung stronger correlation points. For this table, it shows the number of absence and the final grades of the students in a class. Ang example naman na to is nagpapakita ng negative correlation. Kasi pag nagtaas ng number of absence, syempre bababa yung final grades. So, this downward slope shows a negative relationship. So, ganito yung magiging plot or graph niya pag positive and pag negative yung correlation ng dalawang variables. Pag positive, syempre upward yung slope niya, and pag negative is downward.
Multivariate Analysis. This type of analysis tests 3 or more independent variables at a time on the degree of relationship with the dependent variable. Sa multivariate analysis, mas complex ang pag-aaral ng data since there are more than one independent variables need to observe and measure. Based on my research, multivariate analysis is almost always performed with software, as working with even the smallest sets of data can be overwhelming by hand. And merong more than 20 different ways para ma-perform ang analysis na ito. Kung alin ang pipiliin mo ay nakadepende sa kung anong type ng data meron ka at kung ano yung goal mo. Ang statistical tool na pwedeng gamitin sa multivariate analysis ay ang analysis of variance or ANOVA para sa experimental design at chi-square naman para sa descriptive design. Example for experimental design. The problem is there a significant difference on the pH content of crude vinegar from coconut tuba, coconut water, nipa, kamyas, and buri tuba? The independent variables here is crude vinegar from coconut tuba, coconut water, nipa, kamyas, and buri tuba. And dependent variable is pH content of crude vinegar. Null hypothesis. There is no significant difference on the pH content of crude vinegar from coconut tuba, coconut water, nipa, kamyas, and buri tuba. Statistical tool is ANOVA or analysis of variance. Ang ANOVA ay test para malaman kung ang result ng survey or experiment ay significant. Or in other words, nakakatulong ito para malaman kung kailangang i-reject ang null hypothesis or i-accept ang alternate hypothesis. Results. Using pH meter in testing the pH of crude vinegar from coconut tuba, coconut water, nipa, kamyas, and buri tuba, the evaluation of the pH of the said vinegar started from 1st to 7 weeks. Interpretation. The number of degrees of freedom at 4, 24 at 1% level of probability requires F-value of 4.22 to be significant, and degrees of freedom of 6, 24 period of storage requires 3.67 to be significant. The computed F-value obtained of the samples is 15.47, and for the period of storage is 56.19. which are all significant at 0.01 level of confidence. Based on the result, lumalabas na ang pH content ng vinegar galing sa iba't ibang samples na ginamit ay magkakaiba. Therefore, the null hypothesis is rejected. Example for descriptive design. Problem. Is there a significant difference on the mean rank levels on the problems met by mentors of different years of teaching experience at the SUC in relation to administration and supervision? Independent variables are years of teaching. Dependent variables are problems encountered. Null hypothesis. There is no significant difference existing in the mean rank levels of the problems met by mentors of different years of teaching experiences at SUC in relation to administration and supervision. The statistical tool here is two-way ANOVA. Ang two-way ANOVA ay kino-compare nito ang mean differences between groups that have been split onto independent variables. Ang primary purpose nito ay para mas maintindihan kung may interaction between the two independent variables on the dependent variable. Results and interpretation. The numbers of degrees of freedom of 4 requires 13.28 to be significant at 1% level. The computed Friedman ANOVA value obtained 93.61, which is highly significant at 0.01 level. Lumalabas sa result na ang problema na na-meet or na-encounter ng mentors sa SUC ay magkakaiba. Kapag mas matagal na nagtuturo, mas madami na silang na-encounter na problema. At kapag kaunti pa ang teaching experience, mas kakaunti pa din ang problems na nai-encounter. Therefore, the null hypothesis is rejected.
Normative Analysis. This type of data analysis is wherein the result of the study is compared with the norm. The statistical tool which may be used for this type are arithmetic mean and standard deviation. When we say normative, it is defined as relating to or deriving from a norms, especially of behavior. Pag sinabi nating norms, it is the standard. Halimbawa, you're applying for a job and it has a certain qualification. These qualifications is the norms or the standard that you need to meet. So ito yung basehan if your skills and characteristics are qualified for the job. Pagdating sa normative analysis, kailangan ng researcher na i-compare yung data result ng kanilang research sa norms na connected sa topic to get the final result and in order to conclude. Katulad ng halimbawa dito, the researcher wishes to conduct a study on the mathematics achievement of first-year college students at the SUC in certain regions. They use achievement tests as a measuring instrument to gather data. Based on the result of the test, the researcher compares the result with the regional or national norms. The problems that the researcher wants to solve is if the mathematics achievement of first-year college student at the SUC in the certain regions are within the norms. The independent variables are the mathematics regionals and national norms, and the dependent variables are the achievement test result of first-year college student. The researcher creates null hypothesis that the mathematics achievement of first-year college student at the SUC's certain regions is not within the norms. As we discussed earlier, the statistical tool for normative analysis are arithmetic mean and standard deviation. Those formulas are used to get the average of the set numbers. For the result and interpretations, comparing the result of mathematics achievements presumably taken by 100 first-year college students at the SUC with the assumed national norms. As you can see, they only assume national norms, pero hindi nila binanggit yung assumed standard. But I guess they assumed that it was 75 or 80 because they interpreted that the achievement in the mathematics by 100 first-year college students at the SUC is a little above satisfactory because the computed mean value obtained is a 102.55 and the standard deviation is 20.44. So it was stated that the value of one standard deviations above the mean is x minus 1 standard deviations. So which means it is 102.55 minus 20.44 is equals to 82.11. If the national norms is 75 or 80, then it was above national norms, and the result of this research is not aligned to the null hypothesis of the researcher, so which means the null hypothesis is rejected.
The fifth types of analysis is status analysis. This type of analysis stresses real facts relating to current conditions in a group of subjects chosen for study. The common stat tools may be used in this type are the arithmetic mean, standard deviation, and z-test for the difference between means. In analyzing the dataset using status analysis, mas binibigyan din dito ang mga napapanahong kondisyon kung saan matutukoy natin dito ang pagkakaugnay-ugnay at pagkakaiba ng bawat variable sa ating pag-aaral. For example, the problem is there a significant difference on the socio-economic status of mentors at the SUC and Region 4A? The independent variables is the status and salary of mentors, which is the data used to predict the dependent variable, while the dependent variables is the socio-economic status, which is the data you're looking to measure. To its null hypothesis, there is no significant difference on the socio-economic status of mentors at the SUC in certain regions. The statistical tools are mean, standard deviation, and z-test. According to the statistical tools na ginamit, the result and interpretation is at 5% level of confidence, the z-value to be significant is 1.96. The computed z-value is 0.20, which is insignificant at 5% level of confidence. This means that the socioeconomic status of mentors are almost the same, whether they are permanent or temporary. Hence, the null hypothesis is accepted. Para naman ma-analyze ang napili nating pag-aaral, kailangang gumamit tayo ng iba't ibang statistical tools katulad ng mean, standard deviation, regression, hypothesis testing, at sample size determination. Sa pamamagitan ng mga ito, mapaprocess at makakakolekta tayo ng mga data na ating magagamit para sa interpretasyon ng ating napiling pag-aaral.